and SpaceX, you have used 2/3 of your prop test budget.
I can copy 2/3 of the budget. SpaceX Dragon, that completes the closure maneuver.
We copy. Closure maneuver complete.
That will move on to 4.041, section 4.
We copy and concur.
All right, so our manual flight test has been completed. We're standing by for them to now resume approach 1. So to move in from that waypoint 1, we're already inside of the keep out sphere at this point. Dragon's holding just 176 meters from the space station, and pretty soon they're going to be approaching.
Thanks, Dragon. That completes the manual piloting demonstration. I only had to twist Doug's arm for 2 or 3 minutes to get him to allow me to deactivate the piloting controls.
We copy. Excellent. Thank you. And with that, we ask that you, from the display used for manual piloting, please go to audio settings and adjust a gain setting for seat 1 or 4. And in addition, we would appreciate any handling qualities evaluation of the proximity piloting possible.
We've completed the gain setting adjustment for seat 1, and I'll turn it over to Doug for the handling quality quick look.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop for the handling qualities. It flew just about like the sim, so my congratulations to the folks in Hawthorne. Flew really well, very crisp. It was a little sloppier and wide, just like we saw in the sim, but all the other axes, as well as closure and opening, were all just as per.
Excellent to hear. Thank you.
that kind of gives you a indication of sort of how the design process works. You know, Bob and Doug have had lots of opportunities to test this out and sim it and give their feedback. And pretty cool to hear that their sim experience was very similar to what they saw actually on orbit. Just, I think you said 170 meters away from station right now?
Yeah, we're just 176, and I imagine as a spacecraft designer, that's exactly what you want to hear, is the way that I trained you in it here on the ground is exactly how it performed once you're there for the real thing. So the second manual piloting test in the books, Bob and Doug putting Dragon through its paces. Now we're time to put it all to where we get to our endpoint. We're ready to get Dragon docked to the International Space Station.
Dragon SpaceX on Big Loop. The ground will be resuming approach shortly. We do plan to hold briefly at waypoint 2, so reminder that crew visors down are not required until the ground is preparing to command the final approach.
Thanks, Dragon. We copy. We'll hold at waypoint 2 for a pause, and then we'll get our visors then once you command.
We copy.
And station, it's Houston on the Big Loop. As you've heard, Endeavour is resuming its approach to waypoint 2. Chris, you can monitor now per step 2. That's step 2 and 1.104. Crew Dragon approach and retreat monitor.
Copy. Step 2 will work.
Pretty cool view of the International Space Station from Dragon. This would actually be overlaid, or rather their controls would be overlaid on the displays on top of this view. And we got to see some pretty cool views from behind. Actually, there's a view right there. You can see the station on their displays. Visors up, Doug in the left seat, Bob in the right seat.
Yeah, so at this moment, Dragon is going to be resuming the approach. As we heard them informing the crew, they're going to have that one final hold when they're just 20 meters away. That's going to be at waypoint 2. We're expecting it to be a brief hold while the teams all tag up and do a final go to move in for docking. Getting a great look at the space station itself. The docking port is right in the center of our screen. You can see another spacecraft currently docked to the space station, the Japanese HTV spacecraft currently docked to the Earth-facing port, one of those common berthing mechanisms also on Node 2. So Dragon will be the second vehicle to be docked to the Harmony module once it makes its final approach. And it's moving in right now. Again, just to give you an idea of how quickly they're moving, they're going at about 0.3 of a meter per second right now. And so if you're having any trouble with that docking simulator online, remember to just slow things down a little bit and your chances will go up exponentially. We just passed 140 meters away. We'll get our live video comm back with the space station momentarily. As soon as we do, we'll bring you back up there. But for now, Bob and Doug continuing to fly in. They're just 135 meters away.
Station on the Big Loop. In step 2, a review of steps 3 and 4 is complete. Crew on the International Space Station is ready for docking.
Station Houston on the Big Loop. We copy. The review of 3 and 4 complete. International Space Station ready. Thank you.
Expedition 63 Commander Chris Cassidy giving the report. Station is ready for docking.
Yeah, and you can see the trajectory of the spacecraft. There are small corrections that are happening. So as we get closer and closer to station, we're trying to stay within those two corridors, which are shown coming out of the docking port that we're going towards. That little dot, I think, was the 20-meter hold point, so that's where we expect there to be the spacecraft holding right in front of the International Docking Adapter. There'll be a go, no-go poll. The ground teams have worked hard over the past probably years to come up with a set of what we call flight rules. So those are technical constraints, items that we look for, that if any of those criteria were violated, then we have a rule that we've predetermined, gives us guidance to say whether we could approach or not. So far, our vehicle has been very healthy, but technical ground teams will all do their due diligence to make sure that it's still safe to approach.
Right, and at this moment, that approach is continuing, still moving in at about 0.3 of a meter per second. Dragon's coming up on just 100 meters away from the space station.
So the very top there is the nose cone on the spacecraft, where we've got a cool view. Left side of your screen is the International Space Station. Right side of your screen is Dragon.
We're inside 100 meters, continuing to close. Again, we're going to have a short hold at 20 meters. Teams will just do a final check, and then they'll give Dragon the go. We're expecting it to be pretty brief. We should get to that hold point in just about 4 minutes, moving at our current pace.
I think you can see a meatball and American flag on that on the spacecraft. The NASA logo, of course, referred to as the meatball. I think there was some spirited discussion about the meatball versus the worm during ascent. And you can see those logos. That structure on the fairing structure is actually what the Super Dracos are housed in. Of course, all of those are deactivated now, only used for launch escape during the ascent portion. Nose cone right at the top of the vehicle. And you can see sort of the sealing surface, those four circular slots right underneath the nose cone within that red ring are the forward bulkhead Dracos. That's what we were using while we were conducting all those burns, the 5 burns to get to this point. Right now, we don't have a reason to use those. We'll only be making small attitude corrections with the service section Dracos. And you can see the service section actually pretty clearly here too. There's a black portion and a white portion sort of separated by a fin. The black portion is solar panels, solar cells that'll charge Dragon's batteries. And the bottom side, the white portion, is actually a thermal radiator that's used to keep the spacecraft nice and cool. Of course, the avionics and the cabin, making sure that Bob and Doug are comfortable inside.
Looks like we're getting a shadow cast. We are just 60 meters away, continuing to close in, just about 40 meters to go until we're at that hold point. Should get there in just over 2 minutes. Meanwhile, teams in Hawthorne and in Houston doing their internal go, no go for docking. They're going to get all the teams polled. Once everyone's go, we'll be able to give Dragon the final go ahead for the vehicle to autonomously fly in and dock with the International Space Station. Should be coming up on waypoint 2 arrival in just about 1 minute, 45 seconds. At this point, it'll be 20 meters away from that docking port. The International Docking Adapter number 2 attached to pressurized mating adapter number 2 at the very forward end of the Harmony module.
Right there on the right around the center, you can see the forward hatch. It's got a window in it. You can see a couple of handles, and there's some features that look sort of bronze-ish. Those are the pedals that we were talking about earlier as part of the soft capture system. So pretty wild too to see. We're so close that we're getting shadows from the station on Dragon. Wow.
And we're getting these views of Dragon's approach from 2 cameras that are right next to that docking adapter. And the movement's a little jarring at times. These cameras are being commanded by a person at the Cronus console in Mission Control Houston, and they send some very basic function commands to the camera, which it then executes automatically. And so they're continuing to follow Dragon in, so we do thank them for their diligence to give us these views of this historic moment as we are just less than 30 meters away from docking.
Right above the NASA meatball logo, you can see three of the service section Draco thrusters.
That's right, 12 in all. So the 4 of those clusters spread around the vehicle, used for a lot of the attitude control and any small translational maneuvers like we just watched Bob and Doug execute with their second manual flight test.
Yeah, and actually oriented in a way, too, where if you were to lose some of those thrusters, you still have redundancy and control in those axes. That's part of the reason why they're sort of at the angles that they are.
All right, so we should be getting to waypoint 2 right now. And so it looks like we do have that hold.
Dragon SpaceX on Big Loop. The ground is go for approach 2. We will be enabling the resume shortly. As a reminder, ensure your visors are closed prior to Dragon's departure from the waypoint. And once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted. And for your awareness, we have sunset in a little less than 8.5 minutes.
Dragon copies all on the big loop. Go for docking.
So Doug on the spacecraft confirming their go for docking. They're going to put down their visors. Got some instructions there about the crew hands-off point that we had talked about earlier. That's a point where we don't want the crew issuing any commands to the vehicle. It's about just about 2 meters away from the docking adapter. I believe the number is about 1.7 meters.
Station Houston on the big loop. Houston and station are now go for docking. Chris, you can monitor per steps 3 and 4. 3 and 4 in 1.104 Crew Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Copy steps 3 and 4.
Next Dragon on the big loop. Our visors are down.
Copy, visors down.
With the crew confirming their visors down, we should see the final approach resume.
Station Dragon on the big loop. We are inbound from approach 2.
Copy, inbound.
Station copy.
And we're going to be racing that sunset. The approach has resumed. Dragon closing in. We're inside 20 meters. And yeah, that crew hands-off point should come up in about 3 minutes or so, right before we get that final docking. It comes about 20 seconds prior, or just about 2 meters away from the station still. And that's just the crew not issuing any abort commands. At that point, it would be too late. And so any aborts would be executed automatically by Dragon itself. So we're closing in at less than 1/10 of a meter per second at this point.
You can see the service section Dracos just doing all these very small, minor attitude corrections. Really, the autonomous docking system at work, making sure that the vestibule and the soft capture system is lined up with IDA2. It's the International Docking Adapter. You can see much more clearly there the hinge mechanism for the nose cone. Those 4 black circles are the forward bulkhead Dracos, not to be used at this time. And then, of course, the pedals of the soft capture system. Wow.
Dragon on the big loop. We're inside 10 meters. We cannot make out the docking target, but we do see the outline.
We copy and concur, 10 meters.
All right, we're less than 10 meters away. Again, we're closing at that rate of less than 1/10 of a meter per second. We should be just about 1 minute, 45 seconds away from docking.
There's a center line camera right in that middle, so that you can see where the forward hatch is, and right in the middle of that there's a window, and there's a center line camera that is aligned with the center of the vehicle and the center of the docking mechanism. So that is what the autonomous docking system is using to line up with sort of a cross hatch, cross target on the docking port. Again, the forward docking port on PMA2, or the pressurized mating adapter.
And we are just 5 meters away. Again, we're racing that sunset. This Dragon continues to close, 4 meters to go.
Those shadows of the space station on the vehicle. Yeah, you can actually see the centerline camera pretty clearly there, sort of with the contrast of the sun right now.
3 meters to go. Two meters. We are inside the hands-off point, the chop, the crew hands-off point. 1 meter to go. Soft capture complete.
Dragon in space. Soft capture confirmed. Stand by for retraction and docking.
Standby.
And we just heard it, soft capture. We have docking, that coming at 7:16 a.m. Pacific time, with the station and Dragon flying 262 statute miles right over the border between northern China and Mongolia.
You saw a little bit of motion there of Dragon. That was that relative motion that the soft capture system is damping out. Once that motion is clear, then the soft capture system will be retracted, and Dragon will go for hard capture.
Again, if just now tuning in, that soft capture, that docking coming 7:16 a.m. Pacific, 10:16 a.m. over on the East Coast. Dragon and the International Space Station were flying 262 statute miles right over the border between northern China and Mongolia.
SpaceX soft capture ring retraction.
So that soft capture ring now going to retract. It's one more step on the way to docking complete.
Copy. Please take it on board.
Yeah, and so the next step here is once the soft capture ring is retracted, there are 12 latches that we refer to as hard capture latches. Those are what will really create that pressure tight seal between the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station. So once soft capture is complete, and I believe we'll get that call from our core here, Anna, then we'll get confirmation of hard capture, and the crew, of course, aboard have this information on their displays, so they'll also see indication of hard capture complete. And once those two steps are done, then that's docking complete.
That's right, and we're expecting to hear some words from everybody. A pretty monumental moment. I mean, for Doug Hurley, he's returning to where he last docked almost 9 years ago on the very last space shuttle mission, now commanding the very first commercial spacecraft to deliver astronauts to the International Space Station.
That's got to be cool for them. They've mentioned quite a few times that they're best friends, our favorite dads in space, as we've been calling them. This has got to be really cool for them. It's got to be really cool for their families too, watching this.
Looks like we have another quick handover. We'll get that video back shortly. We're about 75% complete already with that retraction. Once that retraction is completed, we'll keep an eye out for the 12 ready to hook indicators. Once those are ready, those 12 hooks will begin to engage, and that'll securely attach Dragon to the International Space Station.
Yeah, so right now the vehicle confirming that the soft capture system is deployed correctly and is fully retracted. And then once the soft capture system is fully retracted, that'll set up the vehicle to put in the hard capture pins. There's 12 of those around the docking ring, and that's what creates that airtight seal between the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station. The volume between, which we refer to as the vestibule, is currently not pressurized. Of course, it was just exposed to the vacuum of space until literally minutes ago, about 4 minutes ago. So just waiting for the vehicle to get that.
Dragon SpaceX, ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
All right, so we see those ready to hook indicators are lighting up green. So we should be just about to step into those 12 hooks beginning to engage to get that secure mate between Dragon and the International Docking Adapter on the space station.
Wow, right now those two vehicles are flying together. They are attached to each other.
It's been just under 19 hours since we lifted off. We're actually at about 18 hours, 58 minutes, and 42 seconds. So we promised about a 19-hour ride up to station, and we made it just a few minutes before that. They were able to dock a few minutes ahead of schedule. We were tracking them to still take about another 10 minutes, but able to step through all of their burns about 16 minutes ahead of schedule and get us to where we are now. If you missed it just a few moments ago, that initial docking coming at 7:16 a.m. Pacific, 10:16 a.m. over on the east coast of the United States, and they were 262 statute miles flying together over the northern border of China and Mongolia. So really exciting. We're just waiting for this docking complete to be confirmed. We're expecting to hear some words, obviously, from the crew on board and all the excited teams down here. We're just waiting for this moment. And then it's time to start getting Dragon integrated into the station. There will be an umbilical that will get mated, and that'll allow Dragon to flow data and power into the station systems, and then it'll be over to the crew.
Endeavour and station at Houston on the big loop. MCS is configured. We're proceeding with hook driving.
All right, and they did a quick, so the motion control system onboard station now back under those control moment gyros, so handed over from the Russian thrusters, and Dragon now given the go to drive those hooks. We have to do that changeover of attitude control before we drive those hooks, as the Russian thrusters a little bit more dynamic in their control of attitude, and if you had a thruster firing while you were starting to drive those hooks, that could miss a line. So going over to the smoother control moment gyros on the U.S. side, now controlling the attitude on board the station, and those hooks, those 12 hooks on Dragon, about to start driving.
Right now, Dragon and ISS attached, just flying off the east coast of China, just underneath Japan. Attached to each other, we recently passed over to the orbital night, so we're on the currently the dark side of the world. And actually, we're lucky enough to see soft capture happen just as we were crossing over the Terminator line.
And if you're wondering what you're looking at, this is one of the cameras on the very outboard part of the Japanese experiment module, looking back in towards the very front part of Node 2, where Dragon is currently docked. We are in an orbital nighttime, that's why everything is so dark, but you're looking at Dragon. It is horizontal to the ground. So the hatch part is right where that green light pretty much is. You can see the nose cone still illuminated above it, and it is currently attached to an international docking adapter on the International Space Station.
And inside that capsule are Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, first astronauts to fly on a privately developed vehicle up to the International Space Station. Both test pilots got to do some fun tests today. Have a few more steps before they can actually get aboard and ingress to the International Space Station. And that's what we heard over the big loop, that transition, which allows us to then proceed with hard capture.
And we're seeing the first set of hooks, so the first 6 out of the 12 are now closed, 6 more to go.
Again, there are 12 of those along the ring. And that helps us ensure that we have an airtight seal. It is vacuum around them right now, so we want to make sure we're keeping all of that valuable life support in the vehicle. Now the combined ISS Dragon vehicle.
Meanwhile, inside the capsule, Bob and Doug also standing by for this hard capture to complete. And once we have that docking complete call, they'll be able to start stepping through a number of procedures to get them ready to move into the International Space Station. They'll get the go-ahead to doff or get out of their suits, and then they'll have some activities on the Dragon side to prepare for the hatch opening. Chris Cassidy will mainly be working on the station side to pressurize the vestibule. So as Shiv has talked about, the space between the Dragon capsule and the space station was exposed to vacuum, and even after this tight seal has occurred, we'll still be at vacuum inside. So we'll actually open up a valve to supply air from the station side into that space between the Dragon and station hatchways, and they'll get it up to the same ambient pressure that we'll have inside of Dragon and on the station itself. They'll wait for it to thermally balance out, make sure we don't have any temperature swings as we're bringing it up from vacuum. So probably from a very cold temperature up to about 72 degrees that they have in their cabin temperature on board the station. And then we'll get the hatches open.
Dragon SpaceX, hard capture complete. Stand by for docking completion.
Copy.
And now that hard capture is complete, so that's confirmation of those 12 latches to create that airtight seal. Now that's complete, the umbilicals from the station side will interface with the Dragon vehicle umbilicals, and that'll provide power and communications through space station directly to Dragon. Pretty much the whole way up, Dragon's been using a combination of batteries and its solar cells pointed at the sun to make sure that it has enough electrical power for the journey up.
This is Mission Control Houston. If you're just tuning in, we are standing by for confirmation of the hatch opening between the International Space Station and the Crew Dragon. There's the hatch to the Crew Dragon. Seeing Doug Hurley through the glass on the other side. And there's Bob Benkin. Still equalizing that pressure between the Crew Dragon and International Space Station, just moments away.
Dragon SpaceX on Big Loop. You are go for hatch opening per the decal, followed by the remaining actions in your procedure 4.400.
Dragon copies, go for hatch opening and remaining steps in 4.400.
And with that, the hatch is open 12:02 p.m. Central Time, 1:02 p.m. Eastern. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley opened the hatch to the International Space Station after launching from American soil on a U.S. vehicle for the first time in 9 years, the first time ever for a commercially built spacecraft. If you're just tuning in, the hatches are open between Dragon and the International Space Station. International Space Station Commander Chris Cassidy now talking with Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken aboard the Crew Dragon spacecraft. That hatch opened at 12:02 p.m. Central, 1:02 p.m. Eastern.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop. The hatch is open in 5.54.400. How copy?
I copy. Hatch is open. Great to hear. Thanks.
And SpaceX Dragon in 5.9, we're going to exit out of 4.400 and transition to 2.102 Crew Dragon ISS arrival through the hatch opening.
I copy. With that, I understand you are complete with 4.400 and will follow along with you as you transition to the ISS procedure.
This is Mission Control Houston. The crew of Demo 2 just performing a few closeout duties. The hatches are open. They were open 12:02 p.m. Central Time. We're moments away from the board Demo 2 to enter the International Space Station. It'll be the first time that Americans will enter the International Space Station on a rocket launched from U.S. soil, built by an American company. The first time ever Americans will enter from a commercially built spacecraft.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2 for Chris. When you're able, we're just looking for a quick voice check on the mic.
Station Space Ground 2, go ahead.
Chris, we were hoping we could voice check the mic just before starting the PAO event.
Okay, copy that.
Houston Dragon on the big loop in step 6.1 of 2.102. IMV duct installation is complete. Go for IMV fan activation.
Houston copies, go for IMV fan activation, that's in work.
If you're just tuning in, you're getting a live look.
Station Houston on two things. Chris, we did hear you over the PAO side of things. That was a good voice check. We might ask you for one more. And then for the Dragon crew, you also have a go for 6.3. That's opening the location 23 and checking for debris.
Dragon copies 6-3 in work.
If you're just tuning in, you're getting a live look. On the left of your screen is a look inside the Crew Dragon on the Demo 2 mission. On the right, the International Space Station. Bob Behnken.
Dragon on the big loop. We are ready for 6.4 and section 4 of the LIO instructions.
And Station, we copy. Dragon crew, you are go at 6.4.
In work.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're getting a live look at the inside of the International Space Station, losing video communication from the International Space Station. It will only be momentary. We'll have those views back to see Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley enter the International Space Station. When they do, it'll be the first time that humans will enter through this hatch for the first time in 9 years.
Dragon, so we had to get had to load the procedure from my iPad and hand it in to them, so that's what took a little longer.
We copy, Chris. Station Houston on 2 for Chris. When convenient, PAO requests an additional voice check through the mic. And Chris, we're not hearing you in MCC. We are apparently getting it through to PAO. Just stand by. Chris, PAO is working comm reconfig. I'll call you if we're ready for another check.
Houston and SpaceX Endeavour in 6.5 LIO cartridges sealed and installed.
SpaceX copies.
Station Houston on 2 for Chris. We wanted you to confirm that the mic is in channel 1. It needs to be in channel 1. A thought here is that it could have been bumped over to 2. And Chris, we see you trying. We're still not hearing you in MCC. We're working on it. And Chris, nothing in MCC. We see you trying. The word here is that as long as that is in channel 1, any problems past that point are on our end, so we're looking into it. We'll be right back to you. Station Houston, we're ready for another voice check through the mic. Station Houston, we have you loud and clear through the mic. Thank you.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop in 7.1.
SpaceX here.
Okay, Anna, in 7.1, it appears that the AVV inner Bravo is open, as well as the PPRV ISO valve.
I copy that AVV inner Bravo appears to be open, as well as PPRV ISO valve.
Go ahead
Dragon
and cycle them to close if you're good with that call.
Yes, we are good with that call and appreciate the status. Thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston. If you're just tuning in, hatches were open at 12:02 p.m. Central Time. We are moments away from Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley entering the International Space Station. Again, this is Mission Control Houston, moments away from Bob and Doug entering the International Space Station. Shortly after they enter, we will conduct a welcome ceremony. There will be VIPs here in Mission Control Houston, Ficker 1.
Looks like they're all closed visually now. We are in 8.3 for both SpaceX and Houston. Dragon arrival configuration is complete.
SpaceX copies. All valves appear closed visually now, and arrival configuration complete. Excellent to hear.
Houston copies. And with that, Endeavour, welcome to the International Space Station. Please come aboard.
Endeavour copies with pleasure. We'll be there in a second.
We have Bob Behnken from SpaceX Demo 2 mission entering the International Space Station. Followed by Doug Hurley.
And Station Houston, we see you, and it's a great-looking photograph. So thanks for that. Stand by one. We'll call you when we're ready for the event in the next few seconds. Got a whole bunch of very happy and grateful people making their way into MCC right now.
Demo 2 crew now aboard the International Space Station. They entered at 12:22 p.m. Central Time. The station at the time was 262 statute miles over Turkmenistan. Crew all gathered in front of the cameras at the Node 2 forward end of the International Space Station. Just behind them is the hatchway to the Crew Dragon on this Demo 2 mission. We're standing by for a welcome ceremony. We'll have VIPs here in Mission Control Houston ready to greet the crew.
And Station, we're just about ready. Stand by.